News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM. Dave Wolf, Bret Witkowski. Wrapping up tonight's St. Joe playoff game. St. Joe falls to Zeeland West 42-0. And I don't want to say it was over before it was over, but Bret, it was kind of over before it was over.
Zeeland West is the best team I've seen.
The real deal. They are the real deal.
In a number of years. I was impressed with their speed. I thought they had great speed from the backs. I thought their linemen, maybe not as big, but quick. Kind of the Jimmy Johnson philosophy was, he recruited guys who were not as big, but were smaller, but quicker, with the additive that if I can beat you from point A to point B, I don't care how big you are on the other side. And their runners run hard downfield. They do a little bit of cutbacks here and there, but for the most part, it's power football at its finest. And if that team is, I'll be amazed if they're not at Ford Field Thanksgiving week. Absolutely amazed. They look tough.
You mentioned it. They weren't as big as St. Joe, and we've seen St. Joe basically physically dominate opponents all season long, and it just didn't happen today, even though St. Joe was bigger.
Yeah, St. Joe, I think physically was bigger. I think Zeeland West was quicker.
Yeah.
And I'm talking not just from the backs. I'm talking about from the linemen all the way through. And it doesn't take anything away from St. Joe. It's just for Zeeland West, it fits what they do. They run the wing team. They run it to perfection. I don't think they had one negative play the entire night.
I know one thing we didn't have at all was penalty. Neither team had a penalty all night long.
Oh, and that's why both teams are 9-1.
Yeah.
I mean, because they don't self-destruct. Some teams get penalties because after they score a first down, they think it's, the NFL and stuff. And those are things that help build programs. And, I thought at the end, Coach Bradley let me backtrack. The sportsmanship between these two teams is at the highest level possible. You saw it too. They were helping each other up when it was 0-0, when it was 28-0, 40-0. And I commend St. Joe's guys. You get down at that, you could lose your cool.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And I thought Zeeland West played with a lot of class. And when they were handing out that district trophy to Zeeland West, Coach Bradley made sure all the guys were lined up, watching it for two reasons. One, you respect your opponents.
Yeah.
Zeeland West deserved the title tonight. And two, we plant the seed. What side of the line we want to be on next year? This side or that side?
With St. Joe, we've seen this is the second time in the last 3 years that St. Joe has fallen to Zeeland West in the playoffs. And this goes to show what kind of program you need to have to take it to the next level. And it's something that St. Joe has seen now twice in the last 3 years. So I look at it this way. Michigan for years was not able to beat Ohio State. Michigan did not win a national championship until they were able to finally get that monkey off their back by beating Ohio State. It's a rivalry game, but Ohio State ran things always very well, and Michigan couldn't beat them. Michigan, when they finally beat them, they finally showed what it takes to win a Big Ten title, to win a national title. St. Joe's got to be able to take that next step and not only beat, but they've got to learn to compete with Zeeland West.
Well, and really, football in the Grand Rapids area, and that expands from Holland to Zeeland to Muskegon, from Division I down to Division V. They have dominated the state for the last decade, from West Catholic to Muskegon themselves to the Zeeland. Zeeland's won four state championships.
Well, Unity Christian, who St. Joe played here a couple of years ago, and beat.
Right.
They're 10-0 in
Division IV.
Division IV, yeah.
And that's the only loss that Zeeland West had all season was to them. But because of our location, we don't have a lot of options where we're going, right?
Yeah.
We can't go west, can't go south. You might once in a while go east, maybe.
Maybe.
That takes a Sturgis and cold water. Schools are traditionally not that strong to have a good season. So you're right. To get to that next level, you got to go north and beat it. And, St. Joe did that a few years ago up there. They pulled that huge upset. Zeeland West, though, this is entirely a different team than the Zeeland West from 3 years ago that St. Joe played. But, that's why St. Joe went out and scheduled two great non-conference games, and they're both playing right now. It was 7-0 last year. We had Niles over Edwardsburg.
Last I know it was 14-0.
Oh, 14-0. And credit Niles. That's a football program that was dormant for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Shaw has reinvented that program.
And look, the same thing holds true with Niles. Niles was not able to take that next step until they beat St. Joe last year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they did a smart thing, switching conferences.
Yeah.
Get to a conference that fits their size. And, at the end of the day, this one stings, from a broadcaster, obviously from a coaching, from a player standpoint. But
Statistician standpoint.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, you're invested in St. Joe big time in all their sports. You never like to lose that last game, but there's only 10 schools in football that win their last game. And so, I think if you're St. Joe, you're watching next week with what Zeeland does, and I think I think they're going to be in Ford Field, and takes nothing away from what this St. Joe team did. I thought they had a lot of great things, from running the ball to passing to defense. I do like Coach's strategy from, getting many guys involved, and it helps keep the numbers, it helps keep the injuries down. And, I think St. Joe's, the JVs were 7-1 and 1-2 playing a tough schedule.
Yeah.
And that's playing 22 guys. I mean, he does not, the 22 guys is all the way through the system to keep guys wanting to play. And yeah, you might lose some games at the lower levels because whatever school had their stud running back and do everything for 45 plays. But the future's bright, and, this stings to lose the last game. But when you lose a game like this, you're not saying, well, if we just would have done the one thing.
Yeah.
There's not one thing. There's
you kind of know, yeah.
And that's sometimes people say, well, is it hard to lose a blowout or a close one? Well, they both stink.
Yeah.
But it's hard to lose a close one than a blowout. So St. Joe, they're going to move on to wrestling. We'll have the wrestling coach on Coach's show tomorrow. He was our halftime guest. They'll move on to basketball. They'll be active. And they should. They're high school kids. Enjoy it. Move on. Let this one sting, but Monday morning, gear up for fall winter sports.
I'm sure that Paul Broman would love to see the size of the roster and the Bears bench as big as the football team, but we'll see.
Well, yeah. Well, sometimes in basketball, you don't want too big of a roster. That's when the parents start complaining.
Well, you kind of like to have the size of the roster as the personnel on the field size.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other part you like to have is, I think the one thing St. Joe does well is they have enough guys that keeps practice competitive.
Yeah.
And when you have competitive practices, you do well. And the only way you really can do that is to strengthen numbers.
St. Joe ends their season at 9-2, and they finish 3-1 in the SMAC West, which is the shared conference title with Portage Central. And I don't know how they did tonight.
They were up 23-6 over Madeline.
So
they're most likely moving on.
So St. Joe wraps up 9-2. It was a good season for St. Joe. It'll open next year at Niles, so the same schedule applies for next year. Yeah. And then home against Edwardsburg, and we go to Norwich next year and come back home for Gull Lake.
So we have 5 home games.
5 home games next year, and we had 7 this year because of the playoff games, or 6 this year because of the playoff games. But
that's good.
So we'll see you next August from Viking Stadium in Niles as St. Joe opens up their 2025 season against the Vikings. For Jill Cordes, Bret Witkowski, I'm Sports Director Dave Wolf, News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM.